Hi friends, it's a beautiful day here in Minnesota and I am sending you this message with so much gratitude and so much affection for all of you. I know Noah's with you there and I'm missing spending that up close and personal time, but I just wanted to pop in and remind everybody that with all of the things you're learning with Noah, you can continue to learn and deepen that by joining a global school with Cristosal. If you don't know what the Global School is, it's an opportunity to visit El Salvador, Honduras, or Guatemala and spend a week with people from the country you're visiting, learning together about human rights and other important issues and how Cristosal is responding to them. One special one is coming up next year in April to El Salvador, which is focused on rethinking our ideas about global mission, deepening our thoughts about how do we move away from some of the toxic and colonial approaches to doing mission from past centuries, but still keeping true to our core belief that as brothers and sisters and siblings in Christ, that we have a calling and a purpose to be in relationship with people from other parts of the world. And we will be exploring some of those issues, doing it through the lens of human rights, which will help us understand some new ways to question ourselves, to come up with ideas about how we want to build on those learnings and create new ways of being in relationship with people around the world and working on issues that are so dear to our hearts in terms of building peace, working for justice, and preserving the core value that every human being is equal in worth and dignity. You can find more about the Global School on our website at cristosal.org, or you can write me, you can ask Noah. There's so many ways to be in contact because besides that one in April, there are other trips to Guatemala, Honduras, and you can even build your own idea of a global school that you would want to explore together as a congregation or join with other folks from near and far that you might be connected with. So please don't hesitate to reach out. The Global School is such a fantastic way to really deepen our faith and deepen our connection. Thank you for all of what you do for Cristosal. We love you.
I'm so glad that we have such a nice showing tonight so that we can all be here to, join together to celebrate our support for Cristosal and hear Noah Bullock, the director of Cristosal, speak with us. And it's kind of a tall order for me to introduce Noah because it's like, well, where do I start? He does so much, It's like, okay, what am I going to say? But I actually, I reflected about Father Sam's sermon last Sunday, and he spoke about Matthew verse 25, about with the meaning of that verse of us always needing to be alert and ready. Alert of what God's call is for us and ready to take action, to heed God's call. And then as I reflected more, I thought of Noah. He's a perfect example who brings that true to life. He is always aware and sensitive to human rights violations and social injustices, and that is his call to take action. And is very ready to take action whenever he's needed in present time. Um, and he has made himself ready to take action through the years by growing Cristosal in depth and breadth amazingly, to the point where now Cristosal is covering the whole northern Central American triangle, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. And they have grown their staff to over 100 people of very educated, highly trained, and compassionate, a diverse group of people too. They're giving legal counsel, to people in need, struggling, and also and psychological counsel, and they're there for any, just to walk with the people in solidarity through their struggles and help them have their human rights upheld. He just works by empowering people and getting to the root causes of these problems. And Noah's influence with Cristosal is leaving an indelible mark. And the work is being recognized, Noah's being recognized on an international level. He's sought out by top political figures in our country and other countries. He speaks at the United Nations and represents Central America, and he's putting them on hold to be with us. so we're very blessed with his presence tonight. I'm very honored to have you speak with us, and it'll be great to hear the details of your great work at this present time. So thanks for being here.
Hello.
Well, the first thing I wanted to say, in line with what we were talking about, it's never hard for me, there's never any debate about whether I'm coming to sing at Peter's musical annually or not. As long as you invite me, I will be here. And I want you to know that I say that because I feel deeply personally grateful to the people, communities like you, mostly that supported Cristosal when we were nothing. We were a couple people, a couple ideas, kind of finding our vocation in the society and in the organization. Next year we'll have more than 200 people on staff in 3 countries. Sometimes it's hard to explain what we do. It's hard for me to explain what we do because I don't even know all the things that we do. Every single day we have teams that are out dialoguing about human rights and democracy in communities. Just today, Saturday, there were 3 dialogues happening in 3 different communities in El Salvador, 2 in Guatemala and 1 in Honduras. And just being able to, as an organization, be a facilitator of spaces where people feel safe to talk about rights and talk about democracy in a moment of declining democracy is a huge privilege. But then we have other teams that are out that are working with victims of violence to help them build protection plans, to help them find alternatives to forced migration, to help them regain the agency to seek justice, to organize with people who are in a similar situation. And then we have lawyers who are representing victims, who are preparing cases, who are litigating cases for war crimes, crimes against humanity, cases of torture. We even have lawyers who are working on prosecuting cases of corruption in Guatemala and El Salvador. Then we have researchers who are building databases and evidence that are used to support the litigation, that are cited in international media, that are cited in UN reports. And then we have a communications team that are trying to convince people that human rights and democracy are a good thing, and that we should all be fighting so that they are still a reality. And so we have a huge team of people. We're the largest human rights organization in Central America. And I don't say that to brag, it just is. And part of, we've been thinking a lot about our own growth and talking with our leadership about why grow, let's grow to be big. But I think as you could just imagine the US context, in the world right now, some things that we assumed would always be may not always be. Some of the institute democratic norms and institutions, freedoms, I think could be a surprise to all of us. That those are things we have to continue to fight for. That people have over generations fought for and won, but once they're won, they have to be defended. And in Cristosal, growing, being strong in Central America, our growth, our strength, our visibility, our connectivity, provide protection to other people who are fighting to defend those norms, those aspirations, and those ideals. We see ourselves as a stone in a river that's able to just break the current a little bit so that some other people behind us can tread water. And so that's something that we talk about internally in Cristosal. And I mention that because, again, I'm here and I will be here every year because you are my friends. And you supported me as a person, as a professional. We met each other when I was young. Somebody called me old now.
Just older.
Older, okay, fair, okay. Other people say I have age today. But we have grown together. And we were just at a meeting in St. Mary's, Ardmore, and and I think this is probably the fourth or fifth time we've gone to that community to share St. Peter's mission experience with Cristosal. And I think the meeting, although it was a small group of committed people, validated a successful mission project in this church, in this community. One that transcends the basement of the church, that impacts thousands of people's lives in Central America. Our mission project is an international reference. We make the governments in Central America uncomfortable, and we make the United States government uncomfortable when they don't uphold their own values and principles of foreign policy. And so that's something to be very proud of. You are a part of us. I'm here because you allowed us to grow. You are our founding partners here. That's why I see St. Peter's. So thank you for always inviting me and for paying me wine glasses with a little lower. I love drinking wine. I thought, like, thinking about this, our relationship over time, I thought I'd try and do like a historical memory thing to try and help understand how Cristosal has changed over the years. And that might help you understand how to read our bulletins. I think I imagine it must be like a fire hose of information and try and understand the context and the things that we do. Especially if what you remembered of us was 5 years ago or 10 years ago or more than that. We've changed a lot, but not in our mission. And we're a human rights organization, and our mission is to accompany victims of human rights violations and violence, to seek justice, and to defend democratic norms. That's who we are. That's who we've always been. But we've had to apply that mission in a evolving historical context in Central America. And my historical memory is going to be a little Salvador-centric, so I apologize if you wanted to hear more about Guatemala and Honduras. But we were founded in El Salvador. The Bishop of the Episcopal Church Martin, Father Sam said, I'm sure he was with this. Really guy. And I remember I was with him like at the cathedral in Seattle, and he was trying to explain to people what Cristosal was. And he was like his last trip, I think, to the US. And he was getting older, and he fell asleep in the meeting. And then, like, when the time for him to talk, he woke up and he got frisky, and he said, Cristosal. And he had little legs. And he said, it's a movement. And that's right. Cristosal is a movement, but we're part of a movement. We're part of the human rights movement. And I'm going to talk about that in the sermon tomorrow. So I hear into your advice. I won't bore you with the same message twice. But Cristosal, we are a human rights organization, and we belong to a historical movement of people, of generations who looked around at the societies that they live in, and most likely saw that human rights violations were the norm. Because that's what the truth is about our human history. But they had an idea, a vision of how the world might be something better. And they worked towards that norm. And many of those people never saw the changes that they worked for in their lifetime, but we become the inheritors of that historical process. So that's what Cristosal is, that's what your mission is, and that's what our relationship is about. We're part of a movement like that. In Cristosal, when we were founded by Bishop Barona, we were founded in the post-conflict period in El Salvador. The promise of peace the Civil War, 12-year Civil War, one of the most violent conflicts of the past century, ended. And it ended with the installation of a democracy for the first time in its life. And the belief was is that through democracy, some of the underlying causes of the war could be resolved peacefully. The differences in the country could be debated through the democratic institutions. And that ultimately everybody could become a part of that as an equal citizen. And so Cristosal's founding for the bishop, he would say that people would ask him, like, why Cristosal? Cristo is obviously Christ. Sal refers to Salvador. But what the bishop was referring to was the experience of Christ or God walking through the streets of El Salvador. And that was something that inspired a generation of revolutionaries to seek change in El Salvador. And he felt like in the post-conflict, the church needed to accompany the people again in this new phase, but not like it did in the old phase. And the phrase of some you mentioned Oscar Romero, his phrase was, they called him la voz de los sin voz, the voice of the people without a voice. The church, the leadership, had to make a voice for people who were oppressed, people who were subjugated. And in this new period, Bishop said, Cristosal doesn't need to be the voice of the people without a voice, because the people, what they want through the peace is the right to have their own voice. What we have to do is walk with them as they learn how to do that. And so that's why Gary talks often about a model. We're not building houses, although we have built houses. We're not painting walls, we're not necessarily building schools. We were founded to walk with the people as they found freedom, as they found equality, as they were able to hopefully be able to participate as equal citizens, probably for the first time. And that was, I think, the initial when you all came to El Salvador for the first time, you saw Cristosal with communities struggling to develop, struggling to access the government, struggling to access justice, struggling to solve problems. And our focus at that time was to work with communities as they developed citizenry, as they exercised citizenry to solve problems in a new democracy. That was, I think, the original moment of Cristosal. When you all came to San Martin and you walked in the Hamana, the community of people who were displaced by the hurricanes and those shanty towns who were just trying to build and rebuild lives. Right? That was that moment. And there was a hopeful moment there. In 2009, there was an election, and for the first time ever, a progressive leftist party, I'm not trying to say a leftist, but it was the first alternation of power in El Salvador's history. And there was a great expectation that that was going to be a moment of change. The things that people had been struggling for could now be achieved through a different political project, an alternation of power. And at the same time, in the communities, gang violence was becoming the norm. Gangs were establishing control and using murder, torture, and rape to extort the population and sembrar plant fear. And so these two simultaneous things were happening, and the new government was very popular. People had great expectations, but by the end of the first term, people were absolutely disillusioned because the new president proved to be just as corrupt as the old president, because the new president promised to build a peace process to deal with the gang problem, but it turned out that he used that peace process to negotiate political benefits for him and his political party in exchange for benefits for the gang leadership, and the population was angry. And then the next president, the next president that came, said that the truce, this peace process, the negotiations are over, and declares war on the gangs. And El Salvador entered into a moment of hyper-violence. El Salvador became more violent than Iraq. 5,000 people murdered a year. And that's the moment when you were all probably starting to hear to talk about internal displacement, the victims of the gangs. And Cristosal began to respond with that programmatically to create a protection program, to try and create options for people fleeing gang violence, And then later, as this war against gangs accelerated, fleeing state violence itself. Right? And then when that period begins to wind down, basically people are disillusioned with democracy because of the corruption, because the only option that they have was immigration, because of the violence. People felt humiliated, and then emerges a young leader who promises that if they give him all the power, he can solve all the problems. And now El Salvador enters into democratic decline in 2019. And that's when you probably begin to hear us in Cristosal saying, wait, all these things that were achieved in the peace, all of these guarantees to prevent that the worst atrocities and the worst violence of the past won't happen again. The democratic institutions, the norms, are being eradicated. They're being eroded. And we began to develop programming and programmatic responses to assist people being affected by the state, but also to try and deter, to stop, to slow, to build an awareness about the demise of Salvadoran democracy. And so I think that now, here I am with this microphone in my hand, and there is no democracy in El Salvador. The democratic period in El Salvador ended. We now are in a fully authoritarian system. In that system, the president, under using emergency powers, has under 80,000 Salvadorans, suspended due process rights, subjected them to systematic torture. The consequences of that torture, Cristosal has documented at least 200 extrajudicial killings in prison, and there's probably hundreds more. What I'm trying to say is that we are in a cyclical process, I guess, of history. And right now, some of those aspirations have been frustrated. Democracy, for the moment, is on the decline. But the good news is that when institutions fail, people must serve people. And what we see is an emergence of social movements, mothers looking for the family members, communities organizing to protect themselves against forced evictions, against arbitrary firings, against corruption. And Cristosal now finds itself in a new position where we have to lend support to those emerging self. And so that is the history of El Salvador in the last 15 years, and the evolution of Cristosal programmatic responses. We are a human rights organization at a time when human rights are under threat, where as a consequence of our organization itself is threatened. There's a group of former military people who have started a campaign against Cristosal, against me, and they make these videos like every 6 months or so. And in the first video, I'm smiling because it's funny, you can relax, it's funny. In the first video, it's this older guy. I would share the link, but I don't want to make it any more viral. Like all of our staff in the office has watched this video like 1,000 times, right? But he stands there and there's in the video, there's logos of all the human rights organizations, women's organizations, LGBTQ organizations. And he says that these, the very conservative view, these organizations are a threat to Salvadoran families because they defend the rights of gays and trans and these people. And then like slowly our logo emerges in the center of the screen and rises to the top, and he said, but there's one organization. This is the most dangerous of them all. And it's Cristosal. And they're the most dangerous because they're not only working on these issues with families, but they're in everything. And so it's a great endorsement. But that is one of the things that I do want to say to you is your support at a time where civic space is closing, where the state itself uses its power to harass us, to make operations more difficult, to create propaganda campaigns that undermine our image, our credibility as physicians. Here's another funny story. We produced a human rights report in May about the first year of the state of exception. This is the policy I was referring to. It was, according to the government, a war on gangs, and there ends up being a war on poor people. And we produced a report with, it's a 90-page report with undeniable forensic, testimonial, documentational, photographic, and video evidence of systematic torture and killings being perpetrated by the Salvador state based on orders coming from the highest levels. And it's a very uncomfortable report because it becomes viral. It's been all over, it's been in the Congress, it's been in the BBC, it's been in the New York Times, it's been pretty much in every media, international media outlet. And so the president, what they did was they got this weird guy from Colombia, and they made him the presidential commissioner for human rights, whose job is to go to all of the UN agencies and go and meet with the diplomatic corps and talk to the press, only to undermine our reports. And it's a funny thing to do because when one of our lawyers, he's the person in charge of prosecuting crimes against humanity during the armed conflict period, I remember in the first day of the hearings in the El Mozote massacre case, we had been preparing the witnesses to provide their testimonies, and I wasn't able to go. I was probably here in Phoenix, and so I texted him at the end of the day and said, "How did it go?" And he wrote me back. He's also a poet. He wrote back that the truth of the victim imposes, even on the perpetrators. When confronted with truth, people are obligated to see themselves in that mirror. And as we, the human rights organization, bring truth forward about crime against humanity happening in El Salvador today, no propaganda campaign can undo that. No level of defamation, no administrative or legal persecution of our organization can undermine the fundamental truth of victims. And that's what we are trying to do now, is be a voice with the voice of the victims, seeking justice, defending democracy, and hopefully contributing to expansion of human rights in the world. I think that's part of the legacy that we contribute to a process that we inherit from history and deliver to another generation to continue going forward. And Mike told me today that I should just tell you guys what I'm feeling. And I'm describing to you a context, describing to you a little bit of our programming. But recently I was saying to Mike that I've been feeling more emotional lately about the work. And I think part of that is because I do interact a lot with the diplomatic corps, with the State Department. I've decided that I do. And so we've been in conversation with people. Here's what I've been asking you guys to do. Stop taking photos with human rights violators, torturers, and people who make illegal deals with gangs and commit acts of mass corruption. That's all I've been asking you to do. And they won't stop. But at the same time, recently, I think literally every single week, I get text messages from others. People who know me personally, who know somebody whose children have been detained in the state of exception. And then they send them my contact information. And, one mother last week wrote to me that in April of 2022, two of her sons were taken away by soldiers, and she doesn't know if they're alive or where they are. And then 6 months ago, her daughter was visiting her father, and she was detained by the soldiers, and she's not sure where she is. And she said, I've gone to the Attorney General, I've gone to the Human Rights Ombudsman, I've gone to the Public Defender's Office, I've gone to the prisons, I know there's nothing you can do. I just want you to know maybe if you can help me in anything. I really want you to know. Another message that same week I got from an indigenous leader in Honduras, from a pretty famous family of environmental activists, and he was concerned because 5 Lenca Indians were working on the border of El Salvador and decided at lunch in El Salvador, and while they were having lunch, soldiers came and took their phones and determined in the photos of one of the phones that the guy looked like he was a gang member because his hands were in the air. And they arrested 7 of these people and put them in a maximum security prison and charged them with terrorism, which means they would be in jail for 40 years. With no due process rights, subjected to mass trials of 600 to 900 people, all charged with the same crime of no individual evidence. It's a horror. It's a reign of terror. And he asked me, do you think that that's normal? Do you think it's normal that some farmers, indigenous farmers, get stopped at lunch and taken away and put in maximum security prison? I said, no, it's not normal. But that is how it is right now. So I'm sharing these stories because they fall into my phone. And it's not even through the work anymore. And people see our organization as a place to get help, even if we can't necessarily fix the problems. And that's part of our role. Like I say, it's we're, I think, a place where people find backing, find safety, and find support, and heroically, the mothers, for example, 2 days ago, there was a group of mothers from Lempa. Remember Lempa? Anybody remember Lempa?
I do.
You remember Lempa? The Lempa community, we have a long history. I lived there for 5 years. And there really weren't very many gangs, but there were mass captures of young people in the state of receptions and the mothers organized. And with us, they had so much courage because they presented the court's habeas corpus claims to demand the habeas corpus is a right, a constitutional right. Produce the body. Where's my family member? And then 2 days ago, they brought a case against the Attorney General for providing fraudulent evidence against their family members and detaining them. There are groups of people who are willing, who've lost everything, but are willing to fight. And those are the people who we have to be with. And that's where I see us right now. And there is good news, right? That there are people who are struggling. There are people who are willing to take risks, who are willing to organize, who are willing to be in solidarity with others. Because when all of the protection that you expect from your state is gone, the only thing that we have is each other, solidarity. And so that's who we are. That's where you are with us. We do think, I think there's reason to be optimistic because when the people willing to work for change is still happening, right? And one of the phrases that I heard in Guatemala from one of the indigenous leaders once is that he said that maybe with the decline of democracy right now, we were entering into Chivalba. Chivalba is the Mayan underworld. And he said that we've been to Chivalba before, and we know that it doesn't last forever, but we know we have to keep walking. So I think that's, if you feel something like that, something frustrating about where we are in the world right now, it's not the first time people have been in Chivalba. But we have to keep walking. And we have to keep walking together. And that's the hope, and that's the opportunity. The darkness doesn't last forever.
I would like to share with you a couple of personal reminiscences. You've heard from Noah just now the type of work they do and the impact that they have in their communities throughout Central America now, not only El Salvador, but Honduras and Guatemala. They are prosecuting he mentioned this briefly, I think, the El Mozote massacre, which occurred in 1981, where 1,000 civilians were killed, massacred, really, men, women, and children, 1,000 of them put in 1 or 2 buildings and machine gunned to death. So those people are being brought to justice finally after 35 years. And Cristosal organization and their legal department is the lead prosecutor on the case. They are the only organization in El Salvador able to pull this off because of their ability, not only because of the ability, but the respect they have in that country for conducting a fair and equitable prosecution. You've heard Noah talk about protection of people who are being internally displaced, who are being raped, murdered, and killed by the gang members. And I want to share with you 2 things that I have been through there, and this brings me to why I think Cristosal is a worthy organization for us and for me to support. The first one is a place called La Minima. La Minima was a beautiful residential area on top of a mountain outside in San Salvador, just outside. And something happened that was tragic. A hurricane and an earthquake occurred at the very same time. So all these beautiful homes on this ridge on top of this mountain slid off the mountain and displaced hundreds of people. The only place they had left to go was down the valley next to the north-south international highway going through El Salvador, right on the roadside there. And they built houses of, plastic, old oil drums, pieces of metal, pieces of wood, so on, whatever shelter they could make. So, after this occurred, these people had no way to get water, clean water. They had no electricity, and they had most difficult was the fact that they were not recognized to have the right to be there. So now, where does that leave them? They have no rights. They have no water, no electricity. Cristosal did something that they frequently do with organizations and communities like this. They went in and first identified and trained potential leaders in the communities. There are two basic communities there. In both communities, they organized and trained potential leaders. After that, they assisted them in organizing, teaching them how to organize and to advocate for themselves. After that, they advocated with them, accompanied them with the mayor of the town. And in El Salvador, the mayor of the town is pretty much the king. He decides, or she decides, what's going to happen, what isn't going to happen. So you've got to make a real concerted effort to go and advocate for yourself. Long story short, after, it took several years, I think, maybe more than several years, I'm not sure, but eventually, with Cristosal's help, they were able to advocate with the mayor to finally get water pumped into the community, and eventually asserted the right to get electricity in the community, and most importantly and lastly, they were afforded the right as citizens of the country to live there. This is all because of Cristosal's involvement in bringing that community from ground zero to living in a community where they could survive and prosper. That's the kind of impact that Cristosal has. Another experience I remember is that we went to we were doing a global school on women's rights, we went to a organization of women, mothers and wives, in a small village where they were caught between really the police and the gangs. So the gangs controlled the community. Well, the police could come in and scoop up whoever they wanted to, primarily young men between 15 and 20. Arrest them at will. They could also take the young women that they wanted. If they found attractive, they could take them with them and threaten the family with death, which they would carry out. At the same time, the police would come and barge into their homes looking for perpetrators or looking for people who were suspected gang members. And the people really didn't know that was not okay. They were not even aware that they had the right to the possession of their own home, because it was the norm there. So these are the kind of conditions these women were working in. So we went to that little organization there. All of them were gone, I don't know where they were. But all these women were left, probably 20 of them. And we sat in a circle, and each person, as the custom is in Central America, everybody speaks. So you go around the room, and everybody has something to say, and everybody's telling their story. Well, in this case, it was tragic to hear these women tell about the suffering and abuse they had been through at the hands of the police and the gangs. And mostly all of them, just about every one of them, had a teenage son in jail for no reason. If you wear a tattoo there, you're automatically a criminal, it seems. So all their sons were in jail, and of course, once you go to jail there, you have no idea when you're getting out. You have no idea when you'll be charged. There's no right to a speedy trial, and forget that. That doesn't happen. And even though it might be in the Constitution, it's not practiced, and there's no one to question any of that or challenge any of that, except Cristosal and people like them. So anyway, during this time, we went around the room, and every story we heard from those women was worse than the one before. And we finally got to one young woman who seemed to be about 16 or so, and she seemed to be a little less mentally competent than like some of the others. And so when we asked her what happened to her, she just sat there and didn't say a word, and probably took a minute or so. She had her head down. All of a sudden, she started just bursting into tears. She couldn't even vocalize what happened to her. So we broke down into groups of three, two ladies and one of us visitors, and we just talked to them. And the real value of what we do there and what Cristosal does there includes being present with someone with such suffering. People in such extreme circumstances, first of all, want to be able to tell their stories. Secondly, they want someone to listen to their stories. Thirdly, they want someone there who cares about them. And lastly, they can find some hope in the fact that we will tell the world what's happening. That doesn't mean that we're going to solve the problem. That doesn't mean that the next day anything's going to change. But this is the value of us being there with Cristosal, and this is the kind of impact that this organization has. I am proud to say that we've been financially supporting them, but that's not the only support we give them. it's really important to understand too that the staff of Cristosal is really heartened and inspired by our presence, just like the people that we visit. They're in very difficult circumstances there, as I think he'd give you a little peek into that, but I'm not sure he's telling you everything. So it's a very difficult situation for them and the staff. And I think it's, from my point of view, I think that if you remember one thing, one word from this program tonight, it will be the word impact. IMPACT, impact. That's the kind of organization we're supporting. And I would just ask you to, when you think about what you might like to donate, you not only think about money, but you think about donating, continuing your prayers and continuing to talk to others about what's going on in Central America and other places like it, and the suffering in the world, and hopefully by you being informed directly from the horse's mouth tonight, you might be able to say to someone, not all the people coming over the border are criminals. This is what's happening in Central America. That's why these people are coming here. Who in their right mind would send a 15-year-old child by him or herself to America without having a good reason? So Cristosal is working on these problems. They're having a great impact, and I would ask you to be generous.